As an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the whole wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday morning, 8:30 on the Eastern Seaboard. We're coming to you in the midst of Hurricane Milton. The eye of the storm is over us. We had to get the episode in while we had the brief moment. Or full transparency, guys, we're going to pre-record this one just on the off chance that my internet and electricity are down. So if anything wild happens to break on Wednesday afternoon or evening, apologies in advance. We weren't able to get that in the show, but we thank you for joining us anyway. It is a brand new show. The content will be fresh, even if we are not sitting in front of you. And we just wanted to have it open for you in the chat on Rumble, because we appreciate you there. You're live and lively. We wanted to set it up every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Rumble.com/AmRad. Pod is where you find us. And if you listen to the audio format on iTunes or Spotify or iHeart, make sure that you subscribe so you get the updates. This is coming to you Thursday, October the 10th. Happy birthday to my younger sister. She is turning 38 today. Sorry, sis, that I had to reveal that, but I know you wouldn't mind it too much. And today's fare is fresh. We're talking about, though, theme that we're kind of been hovering around. There's certainly been a lot of examples in mass, and that is the fact that the federal government pretty much hates the American people, and now they just kind of taken the mask off entirely. They're not going to even do a show of solidarity or we're trying to care for you. It's flat out and obvious and clear, and we've got lots of examples to get to, especially in light of the hurricane. Those examples are legion. So before we do, let's bring on my counterpart, Garrett O'Boyle at GOB Actual is where you can find him on social media. Garrett, it hasn't hit me yet, but I might be talking to you from beyond the grave if you are in the chat on Rumble. But hopefully everything is good on the home front there in Wisconsin.
Well, Steve, the American Radicals Podcast has to fit its untimely end at some point. So maybe the eye of Milton will cause it. Hopefully not, though, for your sake and for mine.
Eye of Milton sounds like something that the White House apothecary puts into the concoction to get Joe Biden boosted up for 6.5 minutes a day, during which time he can stab his vice president in the ribs and say that my governor, Ron DeSantis, is doing an excellent job. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah, they sprinkle it on his ice cream cone. Is there some Eye of Milton on my cone this evening?
Well, talking about the hurricane, and it's the Milton's hitting Florida, but Hurricane Helene is already over a week, and it's just been crazy when you're trying to keep up with that information there. And I got to be honest, unless you are on social media, which I'm loath to do, that's not my default option. It's not being reported in legacy media at all, and that's just further indication to me that there's this gross relationship, this symbiotic relationship where they're kind of partnering together. They're compatriots to the extent that they're trying to hide the failures that are from the federal government. I think that there's been private efforts and local efforts that they're doing the best that they can. But certainly the big one in the room, and there's no agency more excited than the Secret Service right now, because FEMA said, hold my beer. We'll show you some failures. And we'll talk about the hatred on display first and foremost from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, because they have a bunch of money and spend it on things that they shouldn't have, right? And that was coming from the Blaze, but it's been reported all over the place. Treasonous is how it's described, because Alejandro Mayorkas is the Secretary of Homeland Security in FEMA, underneath his tutelage and leadership. There, wasted funds helping illegal aliens. And now he says there isn't enough money for Americans. So this came to light officially during a press briefing. The quote that came from Mayorkas was, FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season and what is imminent, unquote. FEMA's Shelter and Services Program is a prime offender, providing financial support to non-federal entities like localities, cities and municipalities, to provide humanitarian services to, quote, non-citizen migrants, so illegal aliens, following their release from the Department of Homeland Security. So we release them into the interior, have them go to a place like Springfield, Ohio, and then send a bunch of money so that they can feed and clothe and house and provide transportation to these illegals who have been permitted to come in, to the tune of $650 million.
Dude, that's no chump change. And there's not enough rabbits and ducks running around the parks in Springfield to keep the Haitians fed. So $650 million from FEMA ought to do it. But I mean,
That's 1 year, too.
yeah, in 1 year. This is just the latest example of funding your own freaking demise. Like, I, it's so crazy to me, because you would think the government would at least have this piece figured out. Like, oh, hurricane season is actually let me put this out there, Steve, because the fiscal year starts, well, it
Started about a week and a half ago.
so how are they out of money? That's what I would like to know.
Well, they're operating off of a continuing resolution for a couple more months, because the Congress can't pass a budget at all.
Of course
And
they
they've allocated the resources. This is a plot from House of Cards, by the way. Like, I don't know if you watched that show,
I
but
did until
Kevin Spacey
yeah.
took FEMA funds and said, we have a jobless emergency, and just made a whole bunch of jobs. And then one of the episodes starts with them like all huddled around a TV looking at the spaghetti charts of where this giant hurricane is supposed to be hitting, because they don't have any money. So fiction is reality here.
Uh-huh.
But this is even worse, because that one actually was fiction and was for entertainment. And FEMA spent $650 million to support illegal aliens. And now they're claiming actually that they don't have the funds, and they need to give us more money, right? Now, what's not reported here that I found on my own research, I don't know if you're even aware of this, FEMA has all these declared emergencies, because once the emergency is declared, they basically never end it.
Yep.
And they have allocated funds for them.
Makes
So
sense. That's
super,
that's government programs for you, writ large. Just once it exists, you got to keep it going.
Superstorm Sandy. Remember Chris Christie hugging Barack Obama on the beach right before the 2012 election?
Uh-huh.
They have $8 billion allocated for that. It's just there. And they can't tap that. So even they can't even claim that they're poor and they don't have the money.
Yeah.
What are they spending $8 billion with a B as in Bravo dollars on for Superstorm Sandy that happened a dozen years ago?
I mean, think of that. The FBI's budget was $12 billion for 1 year. So you got $8 billion for Sandy. Where's that money going? What's it being spent on? Who's profiteering from it? We aren't. The hurricane victims certainly aren't.
And we heard nonstop about Superstorm Sandy, that we will never recover because New York's our most important city, and the boardwalk on the Jersey Shore is just irreparable. I don't even know what the status of it is,
I'm
but
sure
it
it's
was
fine.
a decade plus ago,
Right.
and we do have funds. So FEMA to claim that they're poor here is ridiculous, but that's deflecting from our purposes today, because only a government that hates you would spend $650 million on illegal aliens and brag about it, and then go to the people in North Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia, South Carolina, who got crushed by Hurricane Helene and say, we know you don't have any electricity or cell phone service, but or access to the media, by the way. But if you see this media report, why don't you hop on your cell phone that has no access and hopefully has a charge because there's no electricity, and then get on the FEMA website and apply for a $750 loan that one day you can repay us, sure, with interest, so that you can have that money in your pocket to buy supplies from stores that are no longer there. Or I'll tell you what, why don't you hop on Jeff Bezos's Amazon and he can deliver it via the roads that are completely washed out? We're here for you though, America.
Uh-huh. It's really reminiscent of what did they pay people during COVID? Wasn't it like $750 then too, or
I think it was like $1,600 or $1,200 stimmy checks. Then we got we got 2 stimmy checks. And it was shut down your non-essential business that you use to feed your family and pay your mortgage because it's not essential to society, even though it is to you, even though you do have, in theory, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's not essential. Your happiness isn't essential. Your lifelong pursuits are completely negated. Stay home, and we will print a bunch of money out of thin air and send it to you so that you can then go to the big box store that we allowed to stay open and walk down one-way grocery shopping aisles with a diaper on your face. Simp.
yes, peasant, bend over, take it. Here it comes again. Uh, this too, though, like it's another example of just throw money at the problem and that'll fix it. But that doesn't fix it. Shutting down my business during COVID and throwing me $1,000 or so, maybe twice, isn't going to fix the problem. Just like here, throwing $750 as a loan. Hey, it's a loan, by the way. Like, what good is that going to do anyone? It's not going to do anybody any good. Hopefully, what it does, here's the good. The silver lining is this. Hopefully, people who make it through and survive will then realize that they've not hated their government nearly enough and they've been checked out for far too long, and that they can hopefully rebuild their life and make it one where they're like, you know what, this was not the American dream that was sold to me my whole life, where my government's going to toss me a couple $100 that I got to pay back when it's for most of them probably literally the most precarious time of their existence. And big government's gonna toss me a few $100, and what am I gonna do with that? Wipe my ass because I can't go to Walmart because it's closed down or shut down or washed away. Dude, it seems like every episode, Steve, I walk away despising the government more and more. And I live in Wisconsin. I'm a hurricane free up here.
Well, I mean, that is my endeavor, right? Is to just blackpill you every single day. At least if we have an audience of none, that I've affected change here
Yeah.
one by one. I actually, because I do have internet access today, the day before Milton, went to FEMA's website because I want to find out about how I'm going to be able to get my $750 loan, right? That's what's going to happen. No, I actually was interested in the structures that are been created around FEMA, because only this agency that's supposed to the agency is supposed to exist to assist Americans in their dire time, right? And full disclosure, I don't think FEMA should exist. I don't think the federal government should be aiding in any way of a hurricane recovery, but I'm in the vast minority and I'm outvoted by the majority of the country. So I recognize the reality on the ground, and that's a sunk cost now. So FEMA should be operating like that. So let's go to the source. Let's go straight to the horse's mouth and find out what are the priorities for FEMA. So Garrett, FEMA has a strategic plan, 2022 through 2026. And I scrolled down and found their top 2 goals. They have top 3 goals, but we'll just keep it to the top 2. Goal number 1, instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. The nation needs all communities to be resilient, proactively prioritizing actions that advance equity for communities and identifying groups that have historically been underserved or disproportionately affected by disasters is critical for their resilience. Equity, we did a couple episodes on language. I remember equity being one of them. Equity means communism, right?
Pretty much that's what it means these days.
Equal outcomes. So if you have better outcomes than others, then we need to actually take a proactive effort in hurting you,
Mhm.
bringing your life down so that there can be equity, which would explain a lot of what FEMA is doing. So goal number one is communism. Goal number two, lead whole of community in climate resilience. FEMA will take a people first approach to increase climate literacy. We have people who can't actually read, they're not literate, but we're going to get climate literate. Develop tools, allocate resources informed by future risk estimates, like the world is going to burn up in 10 years, right? And target investments, which means they're spending your money to create a more equitable and resilient nation. So we have communism in goal two, and then the global warming, going to bring out communism via global warming in goal number two. And this is from the Emergency Management Administration, which is supposed to be just making sure that people can get food and water when there's a mass casualty event or a bad weather event.
I just saw this clip yesterday, maybe the day before. It was Joe Rogan and Cam Haines. If you don't know who Cam Haines is, he's like a pretty renowned hunter, bow hunting, I think specifically. But they were talking about equity essentially, or kind of turned that way. And Rogan said something like, "You don't have equity of effort either." And it's like, oh yeah, that like great point, because you don't have people putting in the same amount of effort, and that but then you have government stepping in and demanding and now basically administrating, and in some ways even like through lawfare and legislation, making the law state that equity and equality is going to be mandated by the government, and we're going to force it to happen. And this is the argument with the Marxists that I've never understood my entire life, because anybody with who's ever lived pretty much any period of time, like if you've made it through kindergarten, you can look back and say, yeah, we're not all equal, we're different, we're made different, we have different skills, we have different attributes. And the kindergarten teacher, just like the government, can't mandate that everybody gets an A. That's just not how it works. And so these programs, like this strategic plan by FEMA, having Marxism as the sole goal, like I, I'm at a point where it's like, all right, tear it all down, disband FEMA, disband Congress, disband the FBI, disband everything, and we got to start over, because I don't know how you rectify even just that issue, their number one strategic goal.
Yeah, I was talking about in an earlier episode that going through the mental exercise of thinking and not being able to immediately dismiss the notion that the government through FEMA could be withholding assistance in the plan that people will die because they're going to vote for the GOP nominee for office. And I couldn't immediately dismiss that. Uh, and I started thinking about, we talked about this a while ago, the executive order that Joe Biden signed in very early days in his administration. It was 14019, where it was an all of government get out the vote effort, basically, where they were mobilizing these different agencies to do it. I'm wondering what's written in the invisible ink on the back sheet. Like, if there's an opportunity to kill off a bunch of people, it's probably acceptable. I mean, I'm to that point here where you see that they're spending all this money on illegals and they have the funds. They're claiming they don't, and then their goals are equity. Ergo, their goal is Marxism and communism. And you talk about, if you've been through school, I mean, yes, people have different abilities and they have different effort levels. Anyone who's been through school and had to do that stupid group assignment knows that there's that turd in their group who did no work and got the same grade as everyone else. And you felt that that was not fair. And you still have people that went through that experience and vote for communists for office.
I know,
uh,
like I don't know, I don't know how you can square that circle because everybody's had that experience. And so I get like the slacker. Of course, the slacker is going to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to vote for the Marxists because they're going to give me handouts. I'm not going to have to work. I'm going to get that 8 billion for Sandy somehow, some way." Like, and then that's the piece too. Like, I don't know how much it would cost to repair entire communities after like a hurricane, but $8 billion is a good start. And so don't throw your $750 at me and say, "Sorry, we're out of money. I guess you should vote harder next time for the Marxists so we have more money." Why? So you can go waste it on your DEI program that you have as your number one goal when and then eh, like I totally glossed over the piece about the illegals. Like you, you literally are funding your own demise in every aspect of FEMA at this point. And like for our government to be giving money at all. You know what would be cheaper, Steve, is to send illegals back to where they came from. Send them back to their point of origin. I
have
don't
them
even
build
I'm
a
actually
wall.
oh there you go. I'm actually okay with the government spending money on a plane ticket or loading up like a military plane and taking it back to Nicaragua or wherever. I'm okay with spending tax dollars there to get the illegal immigrants away from America. I'm not okay with the government just giving them money, giving them food, giving them, whatever. So come on in. Like it's just we become a lawless land, and or then if you try to uphold law or stand for righteousness, well then you're the enemy. Like it's just all completely backwards.
Anyone in government who's making an argument that, well, we just need to allow more people in and we need to be charitable. We know what you're doing. You're going to make them all legal so that they'll all vote for you because it's a transaction that's going on. But, you know, I just love to point out something like, well, do you think every human being on earth should be in the United States? And then you'd have Kamala Harris say, like, no. I'm like, all right, K Dog. How about we let 700 million people into the United States, additional, right? We'll get us up to a cool around a billion population. Th- that's 10% of the rest of the world. So you're going to cut out 90% of the rest of the world. You kind of sound a little bit xenophobic, huh? And by the way, how are you going to keep that 90% from coming in? I guess you're going to have to build a wall, right? Right? But those sorts of mental exercises they don't go through because they just hate us and they hate the country and they would rather see it crumble into ashes if it just impersonally enriches them, and or just personal grudges that they want to take out against people who dare to say things that are either politically inconvenient for them, or even just criticize them. I was
Yeah.
joking earlier today. Do you think that Kamala Harris has ever told a self-deprecating joke, or if she heard that from a friend, that she would just kind of roll with it? John Kerry, do you think he's ever heard that? I
Right.
mean,
Never. Never.
never. None of these people ever have. So,
Yep.
so the ultimate now, I guess, troller in chief, or a guy who's pretty powerful and influential just because of his resources, is Elon Musk. I want to talk about this in connection to the hurricane, but off of FEMA, but to the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission. And I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but they went after Elon Musk. They gave him this contract, I guess, to bring Starlink to all these different areas. And then they were uber mad at Elon Musk for taking over Twitter and making it into X, and no longer going to be going along with the censorship that they wanted and then releasing the Twitter files and all that. So now Elon Musk has become persona non grata from the United States government and other governments around the world. But this report comes from the Federalist. FCC's political attack on Elon Musk has put American lives in danger. So in 2020, the FCC awarded Musk Starlink $885 million to
Whoa.
help get broadband access to 642,000 rural homes and businesses in 35 states. I haven't done the numbers crunching on that one, but that was the award. The FCC suddenly canceled the grant 2 years later, a few months before Joe Biden suggested that the federal government find ways to go after Elon Musk. Some 20,000 households and businesses in North Carolina would have had access to Starlink if they had desired. Of the 21 worst hit counties, FCC funded Starlink programs would have served all or part of 17 of them. So I guess they would have had the ability to get on to the FEMA website and apply for their $750 loan. At this moment, Trump and Musk are rushing Starlink kits to remote North Carolina on their own. And the White House is now claiming that it's also going to send Starlink kits, which could have been there as early as 2021.
I mean, just think of that right there, man.
Their
This
hatred
is
of one man.
yep, and look at how many people are harmed now because of that. Like, I, I don't care what Elon Musk's politics are. The guy is a literal genius. Look at what he's done between SpaceX, Tesla, Twitter now, X, and Starlink, and other business ventures of his too. Like other businesses that he's had before this point of
The
his life.
Boring Company, where they rescued the miners, right?
Yeah, yeah. And oh, we don't like this guy's politics, so we're going to punish him. But what it also shows, which is something, that we've seen firsthand too, which is why we're talking to you on the American Radicals podcast now instead of, you know, on surveillance or,
At a
not
school board
at
somewhere.
school board. Yeah, is because when you point out something that's wrong with our government, they retaliate against you. And in this case, it's Elon Musk just saying that the woke death cult has turned him. If you guys remember the episode, I don't know how many back, a handful at this point, we played the clip of Elon talking about his son, who he doesn't really have contact with anymore, and he's Elon Musk himself said, "My son is dead," because his son bought the trans lie. And so that is what switched Elon to realizing that this truly is a death cult. And your government is all in on it. And the proof is right here because old Sleepy Joe lets it slip 2 months later that we got to find ways to go after Elon Musk. Those conversations were already happening. And that's why Joe Biden let it slip. And the implementation was already happening, as we see here with FCC just randomly, miraculously pulling the grant after 2 years. Why would that be? When Starlink, I don't have Starlink, but it seems like one of the Starlink is where all internet is headed. Give it, I don't know, 20 years. That's what all internet will be. And by then, Elon will probably come up with some other invention that will make it even more available to people around the world. But your own government did this. Your own government did it just to punish one man. I mean, think of that. That we talk about it all the time. Tyranny, arbitrary, despotic abuse of authority.
Now, outside of even the federal context, and this story I do not believe this is a federal representative, but I think it's a government official who shows a ton of disdain for people that are doing the right thing at the right time, the right way, for the right reason, because America is not an idea; it's an action verb. You have to be uncomfortable and inconvenienced as part of being a good citizen. So we have this disaster in North Carolina, and a whole bunch of people went out and said, "You know what? I'm going to throw on the Thanos gauntlet and do it myself." Right? The Isaiah 6:8, "Whom shall I send? Here I am. Send me." Doing the right thing, right? So I saw this story. This is a local reporting. I'm going to work my way through it a little bit, but I think there was some pretty good television and audio that did come out. We don't have to belabor it too long, but it's about this helicopter pilot. So this guy, his name is Sedum. Yeah, Jordan Sedum, was a private pilot, former law enforcement, licensed helicopter pilot, and said, "I'm going to take my helicopter and go deliver supplies." He saw on social media that there was a family that had no water and only like a couple days of food. So he and his high school son flew and dropped off supplies and then just started flying around and trying to help people. They did it for a whole day, and then word got out. So people were hitting him up on social media. "Can you come help me? Can you come help me?" So he just, on the second day, I guess they slept in like lawn chairs or hammocks or something, then got back up in the air again, all at his own expense, buying his own fuel, own helicopter, and happens to see a elderly woman waving, and they thought at first she was waving at them like to say hi, but then they're like, oh no, she needs help. They land in the driveway, older couple, and they got to evacuate him. So he leaves his son behind and takes the woman, flies her to a rescue spot. And then when he lands there, he's going to go back and start getting the others, and that's when things go bad. So according to Jordan Sedum, he's coordinating with law enforcement and first responders on the ground, and he was met by a fire official. He said that the fire official ordered him to leave and not come back. He said he asked the official for a specific reason, and the official replied, "quote You're interfering with my operation." Then he said, "I'm going to go back and at least get my son." And they said, "If you go back, then we're going to arrest you." He said, "I don't care. I'm going to go back at least and get my son." Winds up flying back, Garrett, lands in the driveway, gets his son, and has to tell this gentleman that they're sending up a ground crew by foot to come and get you. They'll be here hopefully in a couple of hours. It's a 3-minute flight. And he was there to do it. And no, because the government says you're interfering with what we want to do. And that is do things in a far less efficient and effective way because we have to justify our existence. And the millions and billions of dollars are going to be allocated towards this. And if you one up us, then ooh, there could be another option. People might see that we have failed on this.
You know, the biggest piece of this for me is having been a cop, you know, I guess is especially what I would relate it to. But how do you not just say, yes, thank you. Thank you for your help. What can we do to help you do more of these flights? Oh, I mean, I imagine a helicopter doesn't take like like unleaded gas like you could get at a police station's gas pumps behind this PD. But what can we do as a municipal government, as a state government? Why don't we enlist? Hey, any other pilots that are willing to fly right now? Like, why don't we enlist them all? And
Instead of stomping on you, like, what can we do to help you thrive in this mission?
right. And I can't help but think of Romans 13 again, where government is supposed to be your servant for your good. This is the absolute opposite of that. You have government intervening with private citizens who are he's not breaking any law by doing this. And even if he was in a time of crisis like this, wouldn't you say, hey, technically you're not supposed to fly in that direction, but you're saving lives. Let us help you, or help us help you as government, as people in your local government. And instead you get the opposite. We're going to
It's
threaten
even to
you
the
with
opposite.
arrest.
It's even to the extent of like, hey, we're gonna like overlook a bunch of stuff, a bunch of laws, and that the government would be like, well, we have policies though, and we have to have an operations plan drawn up, and they're completely in the mindset of doing a government job versus achieving the mission.
Right.
That's the different focus. That guy Jordan is mission focused. How can I save people? And
Right.
he's not doing it unsafely. I
Right.
mean, he's flying a helicopter. I think he's put himself out there, right? If
Yeah.
he's doing something dangerous, he's taking a personal risk there. And
And
he's
he's
not
got
like
his
at
son.
gunpoint taking people on the
Yeah,
helicopter.
right. Like, if you don't want to come with, fine. Do you want to come with? Okay, you hop on. You don't, fine, stay here. But he's got his son with him too. It's not like he's out there with a death wish. He's out there. I mean, think of the learning experience for his son to be like, hey, this is what personal sacrifice looks like to help your fellow man. And it's like, isn't that what America is? Isn't that what we're supposed to be about? Is helping each other. We're not giving a hand out, we're giving a hand up. But it's all become backwards. It's all become wrong. It's all become government punishing good and rewarding evil. This is a quintessential example of that. And all
Uh,
right, I guess you don't get my help. I'm gonna just get my son and then leave.
this is sort of out of the context of the hurricane, but I think you can even make a comparison to how government hates you. Um, it even hates people that are in the system, within the government system, are trying to do the right thing. And I've reminded of Uvalde, the school shooting,
Yeah.
when they sat in the hallway for all that time while the shooting was going on, and the failure that presented, where they just concluded that, well, we just don't want to get in a gunfight right now as children were being executed. Now, one of the teachers who was killed was married to one of the law enforcement officers who was
Oof.
there to respond.
Oof.
And I always think that they wouldn't let him respond. They said you have a conflict of interest, and you're going to be too emotional, which maybe you could come to that conclusion that he's going to not use the proper tactics, or he could break for the stack, or something to that extent, right? But then I remember thinking they sat there in the hallway, and the worst person in all of it was the officer that went up to that guy and said, "Your wife is in there. I need your gun," as opposed to saying, you want one or two because we're going in right now with you."
Right. Right.
Right? Because I know there's policies and procedures at stake there, but there was a greater mission. And instead, they were focused on doing the government work
Right.
versus achieving the mission. And you only get to that point when the government has utter contempt for the citizen.
Hmm. And that, man, that is another great example. That's another one of these examples we can't memory hole. We can't allow it to die. And coming from the background we have, man, I would like to believe, and I'm thinking of a handful of people that I know that served in these similar roles like you and I think of some from the PD. I even think of some from my time in the FBI that I really do think they would be like, let's go, we're going. I hope I'm right about that. But then you see a Uvalde happen and you think, WTF. Then on the flip side, you see a Covenant school shooting, and then like those guys did it right, And I don't. I wish I could tell you where the disconnect came in those, but I bet you a lot of it is rooted in. I don't want to get in trouble. The culture at the Uvalde Police Department was probably one of those cultures where it was don't act, ask, don't act, wait, and I mean, I'm sure a number of you listening or watching have seen the video. You can hear it happening, and they're just hanging out in the hallway.
They're
I,
using hand sanitizer while they're
I
out there.
right. I just can't fathom that ever happening. And then as far as like if it was me or one of my colleagues, if their spouse was in there, I I wouldn't even consider. I wouldn't think that that's a conflict of interest. I would consider that they have peak interest.
A motivating factor.
Right. So like they're probably more likely than not, unless they go code black, which then I understand, like removing them. But more likely than not, if they're dialed in, like let's go, dude. Let's go. You're with me. We're let's go clear. Let's go clear this school like we know how to do because we've trained to do it. We've been taught to do it for a few decades. In today's game day, and like we have to get this right. And then yeah, let's just stand there and let kids and teachers get shot.
Well, who is the priority if it's not America, right? It's we've talked about the illegal aliens, but they're hardly the only one because the government hates you, but they love everyone else. But they certainly love others uh, who have a priority set that is directly in opposition to you. That's where they really love to put the resources now that they have their fingers on the treasury. So I've got two examples from the top. The top of the pyramid will go to the human Roomba first, because I got a video for that. And this is Joe Biden saying where we really need to send this money.
You shared a preview of your plan to win this war, and that's exactly what we're going to discuss today. Now, the Ukraine, how is Ukraine going to prevail in this conflict? And I see two key pieces. First, right now we have to strengthen Ukraine's position on the battlefield. And that's why today I'm proud to announce a new $2.4 billion package of security assistance. We have to ensure Ukraine has sufficient capabilities. I mean sufficient capabilities to defend against future Russian aggression. Let me be clear. Russia will not prevail in war. Russia will not prevail. Ukraine will prevail.
All right, that's enough of him reading the notes that were
No
prepared for
kidding.
him. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just gross. But 2.4 billion, another just toss another shrimp on the Barbie, is 4 times what FEMA spent to the illegal aliens. So for as much outrage as we had about that, uh, do we need to up that, quadruple that level of outrage? Particularly when you realize that we've spent almost $200 billion on this small hellhole of a country.
I mean, dude, think of that, man. 200 billion, which still is just a drop in the bucket for our national debt. But 200 billion? I mean, I don't. I'm not an economist. I don't know what the GDP is for countries in the world, but I gotta imagine that 200 billion is the GDP of some small countries, and and we're sending that to Ukraine. Like, I even, but you're right. Let's just take the 2.4 billion. Just the latest.
All right, Garrett, I just looked it up. Okay. When we finished World War II, all right, so on a war footing with FDR having been the president, no, he was gone at that point. Harry Truman was, but coming out of the Great Depression, which we had to spend a butt ton of money, right? National debt was $200 billion.
There it is, right there.
We funded global war for everyone because they were out of everything. It was all United States for less money than we've sent to Ukraine in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is adjusted for inflation, but probably not 35 trillion. And certain, well, okay, what I don't know the total off the top of my head, maybe I should, but what we spent in Afghanistan, just combine America's last two wars. And oh, well, wait a second, America's not in Ukraine. Okay, well, our money is, and so is our CIA, and so are our special
Yeah, you think that they're
operators.
reading the directions in
Yeah.
English on those JDAMs? Like,
Right, right. And and we're funding it. So let's just take our last two wars, the Ukraine war and the GWAT. Let's just take the whole GWAT, and I guarantee you, even adjusted for inflation, where we got a problem here. But it's it again is funding your own demise. It is again is your government absolutely just hates you. And I still, Steve, we're at what, episode 126 or 120, something like that, 127. And I still don't understand it. I still don't understand why people want to destroy America. Americans want to destroy America. Just spend all the money, give it all away, get on a bunch of different war footings. You got Israel, you got Ukraine now. We had the GWAT for
oh,
most of our lives.
that's next for us here too. We just said Kamala Harris was very excited. It's tough to read for those watching, but she said the United States will provide $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon. You know, the ones that are housing Hezbollah. We're going to give them $157 million.
Dude,
Peasant in North Carolina.
yeah. Even that, even just the 157 million. I mean, think of when like Powerball is like peak, when it gets around 150 million, that's when people are like buy, buy. And we're sending that to Lebanon, send that to North Carolina. And that's not even scratching the 2.4 billion that we just sent to Ukraine, or that Biden authorized for Ukraine. Like, it's just so mind-boggling because
It's
we've
infuriating with Lebanon because they're saying it's humanitarian aid.
yeah.
So Hezbollah isn't going to just take that and buy missiles, right, or weapons, or well, they can't. Okay, fine. Well, the money they were going to spend on missiles that they were having routed to feed and clothe and house people can now be freed up to spend on missiles. And then, in combination with the fact that we send a lot of money to Israel, so we're funding both
Well,
sides
yeah. Yeah,
of a
it's like,
conflict that we're not involved in.
I think I forget who it was. Somebody in one of our back channels sent the meme of rockets from Gaza and rockets from Israel, or rockets from Iran and rockets from Israel, both up in the air. And it said like you're funding both. It said your U.S. dollars, U.S. tax dollars, and it's like, yeah, we're literally funding both.
And
I
we're
think of
doing that for a military industrial complex that funds the politicians' coffers, right?
mhm,
And keeping nations like Ukraine afoot so that we can send politicians can send their adult children over there to pick up bags of cash and launder that money back to the politicians. They only do that when they have no love of country or for their fellow citizen. They
mhm,
just see it as a grift. We can line our own pockets. Government exists to personally enrich myself.
right.
That's the level they're at.
And I think of it goes back to Kamala Harris or John Kerry never telling a self-deprecating joke. Is me, I think, well, aren't they thinking long term? Like what's going to happen to their kids or to their grandkids? Or, well, I know Kamala Harris doesn't have any
She's
kids,
got
but
grand nieces.
yeah. So it's like, but they don't think that way. They don't think about the future of America. They think about themselves now. and that's all that really matters. And it's like, well, yeah, that's that type of hubris that won't allow you to even poke fun at yourself on occasion. And I guess, like, I don't know, keep voting the same way. I don't know. Good luck.
Well, I mean, they won't need your vote because they're going to replace it with the illegal aliens that are bringing in, which
Mhm.
is, and they're who are getting special treatment beyond just the funding. Like, I mean, you and I have had to fly more than we care to recently, and we get the great experience of going to third base with the TSA. But man, I'll tell you what, if God help you if you don't have your ID, you're not getting through there, unless, of course, you're illegal. This comes from Fox News. Fed agencies release non-citizens, thank you very much, Fox News, illegal aliens without ID into U.S. and allow them to board domestic flights. And this comes from the Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security. The IG said that according to federal law, quote, non-citizens without ID are not admissible into the country and shall be detained. But Customs and Border Patrol and ICE are permitted to release non-citizens into the U.S. based on various circumstances. The circumstances being, we really, really want them in here because hopefully we can give them citizenship and they can vote for us, right? The report notes that CBP and ICE accept self-reported biographical information. My name is Jose Lopez,
Yep. Yeah.
which they used to give migrants immigration forms. The migrants are then able to get on domestic flights. So they can fill out the form with whatever they want. And even if they don't have ID, they can board the airplane. And then we're seeing that they also get to go in a special line that bypasses all the security.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you have to go and stand in front of a camera that takes your picture. Granted, you can deny that. You don't have to participate in
They
that.
have your ID anyway.
Yeah. And they claim that the camera is purged immediately. I don't know if I trust what
I'm
they
more worried
say.
about the body scan, which I know is not purged because it's been revealed that they are like laugh at people.
Right, which, oh man, we could do a whole TSA show. But well, one, I like Fox News. Somebody told me recently that they were like, "Oh yeah, we heard your story and whatever." I don't need to get into details. And they said, "Yeah, we watch Fox News all the time." And I kind of think, like, what's the point? Like, you're putting not non-citizen, what did it say? Non-citizen. And it's like, Fox is just as bad, like, uh maybe a little incremental piece better, but let's not forget that, like, Tucker Carlson, Glenn Beck, some of the reasons those guys were purged from Fox is because of their faith. Or let's not forget that they forced the COVID jab, like all sorts of other places. And if you didn't comply, you were out. Like, friend of the show, Brianna Morello, that's why she was ousted from Fox, was because she didn't want to comply with an mRNA jab that she didn't have the data on. So she said, no, I'm not going to do that. And, and, and then, oh, dude, it's just so frustrating on so many levels, because here again, another example of your government, hey, just do what we say, peasant. We got different rules for these illegals over here than we do for you, and you're our own citizens. And the piece of this I really love is it says that um illegal immigrants without identification shall be detained. So a word like shall, with my law enforcement piece of my brain, is a vastly important word, because by and large in law enforcement, which is what CBP would be, they would be enforcing our freaking immigration laws if they were allowed to. When a law says shall, that takes away your discretion. So it's like a domestic assault. If I show up to an apartment complex because the neighbors called and said, "Hey, it sounds like Johnny is beating on Jill again," and there's the criteria is met for a domestic violence arrest, a law enforcement officer, at least here, and it's this way in most states, a law enforcement officer shall make the arrest. You don't have the option to not. Where if I pull you over or I stop you on the sidewalk and I end up, finding $5 worth of marijuana in your pocket, I don't have to make that arrest. I can just dump it out and stomp on it and send you on your way. And here that says, well, yeah, even though it says they shall not allow entry. Well, screw it. We're just going to let them in because we want them here anyways.
Well, we got to We got a slew of stories here, but we're coming up on the last 10 minutes or so of the show. I would definitely want to get to this one because it ties, I think, really closely with we talk about the coronavirus madness that went on and the tyranny that was on display here from that. And we got to go to the Surgeon General for this one. This is it's not from NRA. The NRA, as it was referenced, I think it's called americasfirstfreedom.org. Our top doctor thinks gun ownership is a disease. Comes from Charles C.W. Cook, formerly of the National Review. I think he might actually still be with them. So in June, a few months back, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy issued a 40-page report that he framed with a claim that, quote, gun violence is a public health crisis in our country and requires a public health solution. Oh, like there's a proof of concept that we've used before. As we learned during the COVID-19 pandemic, when political figures start talking in this manner, they invariably end up insisting dogmatically that their personal opinions are the equivalent of the science or medicine or logic, and anyone who disagrees with them is thus attacking modernity. Murthy wants to pass laws, so his solutions before the gun crisis, the gun disease, would be secure firearm storage, universal background checks, and banning assault weapons and large capacity magazines to limit concealed carry and to expand red flag laws. Now, how is this related to hatred? And I say it, and I love saying it because it is true 100% of the time. The Second Amendment exists not for home defense, not for personal protection of your family, not for hunting. Those are all tertiary, at best, side benefits. The Second Amendment exists because the founding fathers who wrote it knew that the government hates you and would shoot you in the face if you didn't have the ability to shoot back. So the mask is gone now. We're going to use whatever mechanism we can to push through every single possible initiative to disarm you so that we can shoot you in the face.
Yep, and this is crucial, and again, it comes back to language. It's something we talk about all the time. Is it why language is important? So now they're trying to steer this and change it into a health issue when it's a right issue. It's a rights issue. You have the absolute fundamental right to be armed. And now they're going to not so fast. We're going to shift. We're going to steer it. We're going to caress it and mold it and change the fundamental definition of what it is. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but eventually it is going to be all of these things are going to be health crises like we talk about a number of them all the time. The LGBTQ death cult, women's reproductive rights. If you're watching, you see my finger quotes because they love to manipulate and change the language. The Marxists love that. They thrive off of that. And you know why? Because it's rooted in their father, the devil, who manipulates the truth and language since the beginning. That has been his desire and his goal is to manipulate the truth. And another word for manipulating the truth is lying. They're lying to you. They're forcing it down your throat, and you better accept it. Or and this the piece with the guns is especially critical because a tyrannical government absolutely 100% must get rid of something like the Second Amendment because if you can't have guns or you can only have some lever action guns or bolt action guns to go hunting with, and they've been my entire life I've heard the argument about, well, you only need it to hunt, that's what it's for. No, that's not what it exists for. That's not what the founders intent was when they wrote the Bill of Rights. They were amidst a war for their own freedom to create a new country. They were If they were alive today, they would be considered terrorists, domestic terrorists. They would be considered people who are committing treason, which Steve and we've been accused of committing treason by people. And even to the point of saying hang them for committing treason. People have said things like this. And of course, of course, those who suckle at the teat of the state would say that type of thing. Of course, a government who embodies tyranny would say that type of thing. And now they would try to impose this health crisis into your fundamental rights. Of course, a tyrannical government would do that. Why wouldn't they?
For a society that's sick, just not in good physical health, we are really obsessed with health, and they know that that's a choke point. That's a vulnerability that they can pull on with people, be it for seizing guns or saying, well, don't you want a healthy daughter rather than a mentally sick, possibly suicidal son? So just castrate him. All these elements are going to be pushed through because they have the proof of concept now. They did it. It always seems to go back to coronavirus, doesn't it? And I think it was just such a emblematic of the sorting that went on there. Like the fact that we had people that just simped for tyranny and then others that just bent the knee. It was very revelatory, and it was pretty tragic because for a long time before then was sort of the misconception that people did believe in the same sorts of things that we advocate for on the American Radicals podcast. So Garrett, we're at that time. You were pulling up there. Why don't you list your thoughts, and then we have a palate cleanse.
For those of you who don't know, our back end that we do the podcast through has changed on us a few times lately. I did not mean to pop that up like that, but hey, it happened.
And we have cool font now too, so it's all right.
Yeah. So sorry for that. I kind of cut you off a little bit, but Psalm 29 today. I won't read the whole thing, just a couple verses that I think I'm sticking with the hurricane theme, Steve. And I know I was joking around in the beginning, but in all seriousness, I hope you guys are safe. We'll be keeping you guys in our prayers over the next few days. But a couple verses here really stand out to me, kind of that imagery. And verse 3 says, "The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord over many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty." And that's the truth, man. I mean, to me, it's really powerful and awe-inspiring reminder of how powerful our God is. And then near the end, verse 10, it says, "The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. The Lord sits enthroned as king forever. May the Lord give strength to his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace." I don't think we're going to have peace anytime soon, my friend, but maybe someday. And we'll just keep driving at it, pointing out these truths, bringing these truths to everybody. So that's all I have today. But hey, those of you out there, Psalm 29, go read the whole thing.
All right. And to the palate cleanse, I mean, we've done this before, but the citizen versus government, I think, is probably appropriate because it does at least give us a laugh. I mean, what Satan hates worst is to be laughed at. It's probably why Kamala Harris has never told a self-depreciating joke. So this comes from Reason, and this is Citizen versus Government.
Hello, I'm a citizen.
And I'm the government.
Does this feel like kind of a dated parody to you?
What? No, this format is the new hotness.
No, Apple hasn't been doing Mac PC ads in over a decade.
You know I still have laws on the books from the 1800s making it illegal to offend a horse, right?
Right.
Anyway, if you've got a better idea, just fax it to me.
Cool. Yeah, I will. Hello, I'm a citizen.
And I'm the government. Did you see my mandate?
You didn't win by that big of a margin.
I can't wait to ram through my legislative agenda with my enormous mandate.
Okay, calm down now. A third of eligible voters voted for you.
I should get a sports car so everyone can see how big my mandate is. You want to see a picture of my mandate?
No.
Sent.
Gross. Hello, I'm a citizen.
And I'm the government. It's peacekeeping.
Always good, always welcomed.
So guys, I always appreciate the sense of humor. That's what we got to bring it to you. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. And hopefully I'll be back with you on Saturday. I'm confident that I will because I have faith, and I'll give a full report on Saturday if we can bring you the show. But until then, thank you again for joining the American Radicals podcast here on Rumble. And until next time, have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.